The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like a swarm of angry insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over the cramped interior of the gas station. It was one of those forgotten outposts on the edge of nowhere, a lonely beacon along a stretch of highway that cut through endless miles of dark forest and abandoned farms. The kind of place where truckers stopped for cheap coffee and cigarettes, and locals avoided after sunset unless they had no choice. Tonight, the clock ticked mercilessly toward closing time, the digital display on the wall flipping to 11:55 p.m. with a soft beep that echoed in the empty aisles. Shelves stocked with dusty candy bars, faded magazines, and rows of lottery tickets lined the walls, their colors washed out under the harsh lighting. Behind the counter, the attendant, a wiry man in his late 30s with a thick accent that sounded vaguely Eastern European, wiped down the sneeze guard with a rag that had seen better days. He glanced at the door, willing it to stay shut, but fate had other plans. The chime above the entrance tinkled like a mocking laugh as the patron pushed his way in, a gust of cool night air carrying the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and distant pine trees. He was a disheveled figure, mid-20s maybe, with wild eyes and a hoodie pulled low over his face. His hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He'd been planning this for weeks. Nothing big, just a quick hit on a quiet station to grab enough cash for his next fix, or maybe a bus ticket out of this godforsaken town. But plans rarely go smoothly, especially when desperation clouds judgment. He wandered the aisles first, pretending to browse, grabbing a massive plastic cup of soda, mega chug, the label screamed in garish red letters, and slurping it noisily as he approached the counter. The attendant eyed him warily, noting the way his customer's gaze darted around, lingering on the register. 6, 17, 19, 45, 12, and 23. The patron rattled off, his voice hoarse and urgent, spit flecking the sneeze guard like tiny stars on a dirty window. He cleared his throat dramatically, taking another gulp from the unpurchased drink, his tongue feeling unnaturally dry despite the liquid. The numbers weren't random, they were his lucky picks, scrawled from a dream or some half-remembered fortune cookie. But luck was a fickle bitch, and tonight, it was about to turn on him. The attendant froze, his hand hovering over the lottery terminal. He did a double take, his eyes flicking to a small strip of paper taped just behind the "Smile, You're on Camera" sticker, a sharply scrawled sequence that matched exactly 6, 17, 19, 45, 12, 23. What were the odds? Astronomical, surely. Yet here they were, aligning like stars in a cursed constellation. The attendant's heart pounded, but his face remained impassive, a mask honed from months of this bizarre routine. The patron shifted impatiently, his foot tapping against the linoleum floor, which was sticky with spilled sodas and tracked in mud. And, let me do 20 on pump 2, he added, expecting the usual request for payment. But the attendant said nothing, his trembling hands slipping below the counter instead. In a flash, the patron's own gun was out, a cheap handgun he'd bought off a shady contact in the city, pointed straight at the clerk through the plexiglass. "Shit," he exclaimed as he saw the attendant's weapon mirroring his own, their barrels kissing through the barrier. The plexiglass was smeared with fingerprints and lotto residue, but both men knew it wouldn't stop a bullet. Silence stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the hum of the lights, the distant whoosh of a passing car, and the chirp of crickets outside. The patron's mind raced. This wasn't the plan. He was supposed to flash the gun, grab the cash, and bolt. Now, he was in a standoff with a clerk who looked more resigned than scared. "Is it bulletproof?" the patron finally asked, his voice cracking slightly, trying to break the tension with false bravado. The attendant shook his head slowly, his accent thickening under stress. "Your gun's not cocked," he replied, fumbling the words. The patron blinked, confused. "What, your gun? You didn't cock it?" The attendant demonstrated, pulling back the hammer on his pistol with a sharp click, a nervous grin splitting his face. Like that. Now the silence was electric, sweat beading on the patron's forehead, his palms slick against the gun's grip. This wasn't self-defense. This was something else, something twisted. The attendant's eyes held a weary knowledge, like he'd seen this play out before. Confusion washed over the patron as he lowered his weapon slightly, stepping back. "Forget it, man," he muttered, defeat coloring his tone. Keep the damn money. But the attendant wasn't done. He popped open the register with a chime, slipping a crisp $5 bill into his pocket. You don't understand, he said, his accent vanishing like mist, revealing a flat, American drawl underneath. I can't let you go. He rounded the counter, knocking bags of chips to the floor in his haste, his gaze locked on the patron like a predator. The patron backed toward the door, but the attendant was faster, nudging him outside with the gun's barrel. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint rumble of thunder in the distance. The parking lot was empty save for the patron's beat-up sedan at Pump 2, its headlights cutting weak beams into the darkness. That's yours on 2, right? The attendant asked, scanning the lot. The patron nodded numbly. Throw me your keys and the gun. After a moment's hesitation, the items clattered to the asphalt. What's all this about? The patron demanded, his voice rising in fear. Get in the car, the attendant ordered, gesturing to the passenger side. And if you try to run, I will shoot you. The patron sighed, a wave of self-pity crashing over him. He'd come here to rob, not to beg for mercy. Look man, I didn't even take the damn money. The attendant's expression softened slightly as he slid into the driver's seat after tying the patron with a coil of metal twine he'd fetched from the station. This has nothing to do with the money. All you did was make this easier for me. The engine roared to life, and they rolled out, looping around to the back of the building where a dilapidated car wash loomed like a forgotten relic. The sign hanging from a chain read, out of service, its letters faded and peeling. The patron's heart sank further. This felt like the setup for a horror movie, the kind where the victim ends up chopped into pieces in some serial killer's lair. As they halted before the wash, the attendant shifted into neutral, the car settling onto the metal tracks with a groan. He let out a heavy sigh, staring into the dark maw of the entrance. What are the odds you'd pick those exact numbers? He mused, a faint, ironic chuckle escaping his lips. The patron twisted against his bonds, confusion and fear knotting his gut. Man, what are you talking about? The attendant shook his head. It doesn't matter. But as the car began to inch forward, pulled by some unseen mechanism after the attendant inserted the 5 into a nearby kiosk, he relented. Thank you, he said softly. The patron's voice pitched higher. What the hell do you even mean, man? Another chuckle, laced with resignation. I thought they were crazy too, the people that found it. But now I know, as you soon will, that they were right. And if we don't do this, God knows what this thing will do in its hunger. The patron's protests died as the car was tugged into the chasm. Brushes spun wildly, not like mechanical arms but something organic, flailing with unnatural vigor. Foaming liquids rained down, sizzling on contact, shattering the windshield and eating through the metal roof. The patron screamed as the substance burned his skin, the brushes latching on like tentacles, tearing and grinding. The attendant watched from outside, cranking up the station speakers to drown out the cries with blaring music, a tinny pop song that clashed grotesquely with the horror unfolding. It was over quickly. The wash spat out what remained of the car, chunks of flesh sluicing through the drains. The attendant cleaned up meticulously, hosing down with soap and bleach, erasing every trace. As he sharpened over the 23 on his secret list, changing it to 28, he hoped the next victim would never come. But deep down, he knew the hunger would return. 2 nights later, the station was quiet again, the clock ticking past 3 a.m. The attendant yawned, his night shift dragging on without end. No breaks, no relief, just endless vigilance over this cursed post. The chime rang, and in walked a tired, husky man in his early 30s, rubbing his eyes as if he'd been driving for hours. He sniffed the air, thick with the scent of stale coffee and motor oil, and made his way to the counter. Let's do 15 on pump 3, he said, his voice gravelly. The attendant glanced at his Sharpa list. The 28 loomed large, and sighed in relief. Not a match. Best of luck, he replied, printing the lotto ticket. The man shrugged, pocketing it. I'm usually not so lucky. He chuckled softly. You know, my mama always thought this kind of stuff was a waste of money. I told her it's a game, like cards or whatever. Yeah, the attendant yawned, his fake accent slipping back into place. The man sighed. God rest her soul, though. Say, you got a bathroom around here? Without hesitation, the attendant handed over the key, dangling from an old, rusted license plate, all the way down on the left. The man nodded thanks, striding down the aisle past gummy bears and cheese puffs, the plate suspiciously damp in his hand. He pushed into the bathroom, the stench hitting him like a wall, urine, mildew, and something metallic. He ignored the unflushed toilet, a relic from the 90s, and approached the urinal, unzipping as he leaned against the wall. Idly, he studied the plate, Weavy Fun, an Ohio tag, battered and holed, paint flaking off. It nagged at him, familiar in a way that prickled his skin. Where have I seen this before? Finishing up, he returned to the counter, setting the plate down with a clink. Hey, where'd you get this? The attendant's face paled, but he forced a grin. Ohio. The man wasn't amused. I don't know. Probably just found it on the street or something. A lie, obvious as the sweat beading on his brow. On the street? Yeah. This was my neighbor's Weavy Fun. I saw that damn plate every day pulling out of my drive. But not for the last 2 weeks. He went missing. The attendant swallowed hard, regretting not tossing the plate into the lake with the rest. Why keep it? Sentiment? Stupidity? The man pressed on. I hated that son of a bitch. He was such a douchebag. Once he stole my bike from my garage. Like, who the hell does that? The attendant shrugged, his hand inching toward the gun under the counter. They had warned him, if anyone finds out, they can't leave. He was the kind of sick bastard that'll kill animals for fun. Real sadistic shit. The attendant nodded slowly. Yeah, he tried to rob me. The words slipped out, a confession born of exhaustion. The husky man's eyes widened. Well, is he dead? The attendant glanced at the empty road outside, then gestured. Come with me. They walked to the back, the night air cool and heavy with the promise of rain. The car wash loomed, its out-of-service sign swaying gently. The attendant explained in a monotone, the story spilling out. The thing in the wash, its hunger, the lotto trigger to select victims. The husky man listened, skepticism giving way to belief when a squirrel darted in, and the attendant slipped a 5 into the machine. The wash roared to life, brushes whirling, liquids foaming, the creature's squeaks cut short in a crunch of bones and flesh. They stood in silence after, the wash still again. So, how'd you find it? The husky man asked, unable to tear his eyes away. I didn't. I was hired by some government pricks to watch it. Whatever the hell it is. The husky man turned, horror dawning as he noticed the gun on the attendant's hip. I'm not going to kill you, the attendant sighed. But they might. The husky man nodded, his mind racing. He scratched his chin, gazing at the wash. So, what do they do with it? The attendant shrugged. Hell if I know. Every now and again they come around and mess with it. I'm supposed to watch it, feed it. The lotto system, the randomness, it all clicked. And no one else has ever found this out? No police? Nope. The husky man bit his lip, thinking of his abusive neighbor, the screams from next door, the bruised girlfriend. Well, I guess sometimes things work out. But a seed planted, what if they chose? Cleaned up the scum? 2 days later, 5 miles down the road, at a smaller, more rundown station, the husky man crouched in the back of a crappy Chevy, rag and chloroform bottle in hand. The place was a dump, peeling paint, busted chime, shelves sagging under expired goods. He waited, heart pounding, as a sketchy customer entered, arms full of snacks. Chips, beer, jerky, gum. The customer winked at the security camera, chewing openly. The cashier, a nervous immigrant with limited English, sat up straight. How's it going? The customer asked, dropping his haul. The cashier reached for the scanner, but the customer snatched it, pointing it like a gun. Hey, you ever watch The Price is Right? The cashier shook his head. They play this game where you guess the price, but if you go over, the little guy falls off a cliff. The cashier trembled as the customer aimed the scanner at his head, pulling the trigger, boop, a red glow on his forehead. I don't want to play, the cashier pleaded. I didn't say you had a choice. The game began, gum 50 cents, Chips $1, jerky $2.50, beer $3.99. Total $7.99. Well, hot damn, the customer grinned, then pulled a Beretta. You forgot the tax. 3 shots rang out, echoing through the night. The husky man burst from the car, wrapping his arm around the shooter's neck, pressing the rag to his face. The struggle was brief. The man slumped. At 11:59, back at the original station, the chime rang. The attendant moaned, but choked on his words as the husky man dragged the bound shooter inside, dropping him on the freshly mopped floor. "What the hell are you doing?" "Well, you remember our conversation? I thought about it. You got lucky with randoms, but why not choose? This guy's scum, a killer." The chime rang again. 2 men in black suits, matte guns drawn. Guns crisscrossed in a tense standoff. "What the hell's going on?" one suited man demanded. "Are these the government guys?" the husky man asked. "He knows." Accusations flew, the attendant stammered. Then, the door chimed once more. A dumpy, middle-aged man, half asleep. "I, just need 10 on pump 1. Silence. Guns held steady. The dumpy man eyed the scene, then approached the counter. The attendant, in a daze, processed the transaction. "Can you make that 2 5s? I got to use the wash." "It's broken." "Actually, we're just about to fix it." The suited men shooed him out. Outside, they herded the group to the wash. Explanations tumbled. The squirrel, the choice. Shots fired. The attendant dropped, then the husky man. The bound shooter laughed at his options, bullet or wash. He chose the wash, regretting it as tendrils ensnared him, foams burning, reducing him to slurry. The suited men reported, targets neutralized, subject nourished. But bullets from the shadows. The dumpy man emerged, gun smoking. "Both targets neutralized," he said into his earpiece. Twists unfolded. The escaped prisoner, the MIB's conservation versus using the wash as a compactor for society's trash. The world could use a wash. Bodies cleaned, the night swallowed the secrets once more.